started meditating, especially outside, there's going to be noises, there's going to be animals, things like that, planes that fly over. And if I felt myself wanting to open my eyes, I just allowed myself to, because I thought, what are you going to gain from opening your eyes and just taking a second to appreciate the sound that you're hearing? And sometimes I had really beautiful insights. Sometimes I was like, wow, that's a big plane. But like other times I had beautiful moments where I thought, one time, for instance, I was outside and there were all these bugs and I was trying to meditate. And I thought to myself, what do I do about the bugs, right? Like, what can I do? Because I'm just shooing them away. And then I had this moment where I thought, nobody was shooing bugs away at Woodstock when they were perfectly like content and having the best time in the wilderness, basically. They were hippies that like, they learned to share and coexist with the bugs that were there. And I was like, wow, these little tiny organisms are flying around me. They're maybe just trying to say hello. They're just, or they're just living their lives. But like in my head, they're trying to say hi. And that makes it more appealing and fun for me. And so I opened my eyes and I just like let the bugs just kind of fly around me. And if it was a bee, it's a bee. If it stings you, it stings you. I mean, I'm not allergic, but for other people, it may be different, but it's just about like shrinking that judgmental voice that's saying, keep your eyes closed, don't focus on anything. It's about quieting that voice and really just like learning to appreciate, okay, why do I want to open my eyes? What is it that I can gain from this experience of opening my eyes and looking at this little bug? Or sometimes I'll open my eyes and I'll see a hummingbird, and hummingbirds to me signify like my ancestors. And so I think, oh, maybe that's their way of saying hello to me today. And I wouldn't have seen that had I not opened my eyes.
That was an amazing description, because you just described how meditation is really a conversation, not a command. It's not a command. You're not commanding yourself to do this or do that. It's not like you have a drill sergeant in your head. You actually want to have a conversation and a dialogue to understand and uncover yourself. And I always think about that the simplest form of meditation is having a conversation with yourself, having time to meet yourself. And we would never cancel an important meeting with someone else, but we never even schedule one with ourselves.
Exactly. And I always used to overanalyze things. And I always used to tell myself that was a negative trait that I had, that I'm always overthinking things. But then when I started meditating, I started to have those overanalyzation conversations in my head. And then I started thinking, wow, I could go somewhere with this. Like I could expand these thoughts. And it kind of gave this like, it turned my brain into like a kitchen for all of the like thought dinners and food for thoughts that I wanted to have, and I just started expanding. And now the way that I think is just completely different. And that's cool too. The way you've just explained how we have to silence even that, that trainer voice, as you said, like a personal trainer in the gym, or it's so true. It's so true, because otherwise you just become subservient to this other voice. Again, your expansive consciousness is being contained and limited by this other voice, and you don't get to experience it anymore. So I can agree with you more. You've helped me massively refine that. And we, as monks, we would always talk about how you always saw the noise in your head just like a little monkey running around, and that kind of made it playful. And so it was always the monkey mind versus the monk mind. And so the monkey was always playful, and you notice it, and you don't want to trap the monkey or hurt it or anything. You just are entertained by just how silly it can be, but you want to help organize it a little and help it a little bit, but you don't need to hurt it. And so you've really helped me. I think my meditation is going to be different tomorrow based on what you just said. So Wow, that's the best compliment.
I mean it. I really mean it. I really do.
Thank you.
I think you're so right. I think you're so right. We get lost always in these. We get always lost in just judging ourselves. Just somehow we get, even when we know we judge ourselves, we now judge ourselves for judging ourselves. It's like we find. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh my God, every day. Not every day, but it is something where I do have to catch myself sometimes daily where sometimes I look in the mirror and I find something immediately wrong with what I see. And I have to stop and say, okay, why did you go there with it? Why can't you look at how beautiful your hair is today or whatever? Or why don't you think about a quality about yourself that has nothing to do with your appearance and then tell yourself how proud you are for gaining that quality. And it's just always kind of reminding ourselves every day. And that way it gets easier over time so that I'm not looking. And sometimes it's harder than others. Sometimes it's just easier to go in that shame spiral. The shame spiral where you get onto yourself for one thing and then all of a sudden because I don't like my hair, that means that my body is wrong. Or because I'm not liking my body, now I feel unlovable. And it just goes into that spiral. And the quicker you can stop that spiral from bottoming out, the quicker that you get with that moment every day where it's now I look in the mirror and if I see something I don't like, it's like a reflex. I just go, okay, what do we like? And so you gotta start to, in a loving and compassionate way, train your mind to remind yourself what you do love about yourself.
So powerful. I really hope everyone tomorrow morning is going to practice what Demi just said. When you look in the mirror tomorrow morning, I want you to remember what Demi just said, because it's such a incredible trait that we all have where we draw these huge conclusions based on one tiny thing. So like you said, we draw this conclusion, I am unlovable based on one thing we don't like about ourselves.
And it could be as simple as your hair.
It can be as tiny, it can be as tiny as a spot on your face, right? And you turn that spot into, I am never going to feel attractive. And you just amplify it to these great degrees, and we all do it. Mm-hmm. And I love what you said, that's how to approach it. That when we look in the mirror, you have to nip it in the bud. You have to catch it there and then and there, because otherwise it just gets. I was talking to someone about this the other day. There was a small crack in one of the floors in our home, and I was saying, I want to get it fixed today. And someone was saying to me, they said, no, it doesn't matter. It's going to be years before that's an issue. And I was like, that's my point. I was like, I don't want the crack to get an opportunity to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I would rather mend it today. And I don't think that just applies to flaws. I think it applies to our lives and how we feel about ourselves and how we talk to ourselves. It applies to relationships. You may think you just had a tiny argument, but if you can solve it now, you save yourself years of headaches. So I love that you gave everyone a practical tool to actually do that.
Or another one is, if you might think that what you have to say is not super important, but honor that voice inside of you so that when you are in a relationship, you're immediately starting out with, this is who I am, these are my values, and this is how I want to be respected. And that way you, like you said, you nip it in the bud. Sometimes it's just about speaking up too.
Yes, you're right. And that all comes back to what you were saying earlier, the confidence of your intuition. If you keep ignoring it and you say, oh, well, that's not important right now, or that's not relevant, or that's insignificant. If you keep talking to yourself in that way, that voice just gets quieter and quieter and quieter. And now when you really need it, you can't hear it anymore.
Yes, exactly.
So I think that's a beautiful full circle. Go back to what you were saying earlier. Demi, we've talked a lot about, and I love that we're talking a lot about expanding consciousness, because I think that's not just a noble aspiration. I do believe it's a root thing. It's like going to the heart of the issue, as you said, that if we don't expand our consciousness and as a whole, as a world, we can try and solve this one area, but we're going to keep kind of bashing heads to some degree. I wonder, what are some of the ways you think that people can expand their own consciousness if they're listening and saying, I want to know how to do that. I'm open to that. Where would they start? What are some of the things? What are some of the books? I know that you've been interviewing some phenomenal people on your podcast, 4D, which you're encouraging people to live through this fourth dimension. I wonder, have you had any conversations or people that you'd love to introduce people to?
I interviewed someone recently on my podcast named Justin Baldoni, and that conversation with them really opened my mind because just what they had to say in relation to gender norms that are placed on us at a young age, how we evolve as adults, and how we tend to carry those things from our childhood into our adult lives today. I thought that was so interesting. And, he has a book called Man Enough. A lot of the people that I'm having conversations with, you have a great book. And I think reading is something that has helped expand my consciousness a lot too. And it doesn't even have to be about anything all that intense. It can just be, just reading is good for your mind. Journaling is something that's really helped me because sometimes my thoughts race so fast that it's hard to, I don't know, it's good to just get it out and then I can go back to it and look at it later. So yeah, reading, journaling, and like I said, meditating. Meditating is really important, but find out what meditation works for you because it is different for everybody.
Yeah, those are great insights. Reading, journaling, of course, meditation, as you said before, and we talked about it at length. I can agree with you more. I remember I was just speaking to a friend. I was reorganizing my bookshelf, and he was saying, "How much have you been reading recently?" And I said, "I remember a year in my life where I read a book a day for a year, and it was an incredible year." And I was just saying to him how much I miss it. That was around 4 or 5 years ago I did that. And I've been trying to read about a book a month at the moment, but I've been really trying to find things that I'm fascinated by. And it's not about, I'm not trying to make it about a numbers game. I'm not saying that. So anyone who's listening or watching, this isn't a competition of how many books you read. And that's not what I'm emphasizing. What I'm emphasizing is what Demi's saying is just to really expand your consciousness, you need to let your consciousness connect dots in lots of different areas. And so when I read, I don't just try and read from one genre. I try and read from lots of different genres and lots of different authors and backgrounds, because then my consciousness has the ability to connect dots that it finds interesting. And Demi, I remember when we last were together, you were talking about your fascination with UFOs and you were talking about your fascination with extraterrestrials. And that's become a real thing for you now. I think when we met, it was something that you were becoming passionate about or intrigued by. And I wanted to know how you started to get fascinated with that, because again, that would be considered something that's very different from talking about gender or talking about music or talking about mental health or talking about depression. And all of a sudden we're talking about UFOs. And I love that because that's what's fascinating about expanding our consciousness. So tell us about how that world opened itself up to you.
I watched a movie called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and it really expanded my view of meditation, of how important it is for us to shift our consciousness. And so I started in this documentary, they talk about this protocol where you meditate and then you play these sounds and then you look up, you do like a sky watch. And I tried it a few times, nothing had really happened. And then one night for my birthday, I was in Palm Springs and I had 5 friends with me. And I said, all right, I want to try to make contact. And making contact isn't like, touching fingers with an ET. It's just like you set an intention and then something appears. And so, if God willing, and I'm sitting there and we had meditated for like, I told my friends, I said, hey, it's my birthday. I know this isn't like super fun, but I want to meditate and then I want to go outside and look up. They were like, yeah, down, whatever. So we all start meditating and then we look up and I see something in the sky that I can't explain that was way high above me, all of us. It was brighter than any star in the sky and it moved in a way that a plane wouldn't move. I mean, it made like a question mark in the sky and then it just kind of backed out. And I was like, did everyone see that? My friends were like, yeah. And we were just like, oh my gosh, so it's real. So it's real. This works and it's real. And my mind was just blown. And I realized that from going inward, we can connect to beings that are so far beyond what we know of our universe. And I think there's no coincidence whenever I have been meditating in my backyard and I look up, I get that urge and my intuition to open my eyes. And so I do, and I see something. I've seen a, this sounds out there, but I've seen a flying saucer in the daylight just right above like my neighbor's house, not right above it, but and my best friend was meditating with me too. We both kind of had opened our eyes at the same time and she was like, "Did you just?" And I was like, "Yeah, did you?" And so it's just things like that just start to happen and you can't explain it, but I think there's a tie. I think that these beings from other planets or solar system, I don't know, these beings want us to expand our consciousness. And I think that they're rooting for us. And I think that every time we start to meditate, we start to go deep within, they can sense it. And hopefully, the rest of humanity catches on to that and we can save our species.
I love it. I remember reading studies on astronomy, extraterrestrials, other planets when I was fascinated by this a bit earlier. And I remember reading a study I obviously was born and raised in London, so this was by Her Majesty's astronomer, and it was the astronomy team in England. And they'd found that he was just saying that he didn't know, but he was saying it would be ridiculous for me to not believe that there was life on other planets and other solar systems. And that was just categorically stated, although, whereas at school, this wasn't really encouraged. We didn't really get brought into recognizing that there were other life forms. You kind of believe that there are lots of planets, but we're the only planet with human life. And therefore, we kind of think of life as a very limited way. As your consciousness expands, your vision expands, your imagination, your experiences, what has really resonated with you when it comes to experiencing life or experiencing joy? What today would you say brings you the most joy or brings you the most light or peace in your life today?
What brings me the most joy is spending time with people that help me co-regulate. So my friends, my family. I think that being in nature, whether it's going out to the desert or going to Colorado in the mountains or, whatever it is, just getting away with my friends and just really having time to recharge, meditate, whatever it is that we want to do. And with my pups, my dogs. And that's what really makes me joyful, find happiness and recharge. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Demi, I have to ask you, where in Colorado did you go? Because I just
went to Crestone.
Oh, okay. I just went to Dunton and it was stunning. So when you said that, I was literally there 10 days ago.
I was literally there about 10 days ago too. I went to Crestone, Colorado for a UFO seminar.
I love that. I was there for a wedding. So slightly different. I was there for a wedding. But it was beautiful. I did not realize that that was a UFO hotspot.
Crestone is. Yeah, Crestone is you should actually check it out, look into it, because there's a bunch of religions that find Crestone a sacred spot.
Wow.
And they even called it the Bloodless Valley because it was there was like no bloodshed back when, pilgrims came in and kind of took over.
Yeah.
So, yeah, or at least that's what my understanding of it was.
Wow. Incredible. It sounds amazing. Well, Demi, you've been so gracious and kind and generous with your time. We end every On Purpose episode with a final 5. This is a fast 5 round. So every question has to be answered in 1 word or 1 sentence at a maximum. And so, Demi Lovato, these are your fast 5. The first question is, what is the best advice that you've ever received?
The golden rule that you learn as a kid. Just treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yes.
I think that's so important.
You and Russ had the same answer to that question, just so you know.
Cool,
just throwing it out there. Which is great because it's such an important rule. It's because, you both agree. Okay, second question. What is the worst advice you've ever received?
You should wear Spanx with that. That was probably the worst advice I've ever received, and that scarred me for years.
Oh gosh. Tell us about how simple things from authoritative, opinionated people in our life can affect us in that way. I want to expand on that. I think that's such a interesting thing that often when we say things to people, we don't know how much power they hold. And if they end up living through with that, it can have ramifications. Maybe just speak to that a little bit.
Yes. Well, that experience I had just shortly after I had come out of treatment for an eating disorder. And I thought that my stylist knew better at the time. This was over 10 years ago. It wasn't even the stylist. It was the stylist assistant. And they just said it like, oh, would you like Spanx? You should wear Spanx with that. And it could have been because the dress was silk and it was thin, or maybe it just wasn't flattering. But in my head, I took that as, you look bad, you need to wear a body sculpting thing underneath. And I took that and I internalized it so much that I kind of spiraled. I was supposed to do a performance on like Dancing with the Stars or something. And I was so thrown off by that one comment that I just got so sad and so in my head. And I thought about it for years. We don't realize the weight that our words hold when we speak to other people because we don't know all of their triggers. We don't know all of their life experiences. We have to be careful when using words with others that could potentially trigger people because you don't know what they've been through.
Well said. Thank you so much for expanding on that. Okay, question number 3 is, what is the first thing you do when you wake up, and what's the last thing you do before you go to bed?
The last thing that I do is I put on my sleep meditation music.
I love that.
I sleep to meditation music, so that the second that I wake up, that's the first thing that I hear, and it's the last thing I hear when I fall asleep.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Okay. Question number 4. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in the last 12 months?
In the last 12 months, oh Jesus. There's so many lessons I could tell you.
Tell us a few.
Tell us a few. Don't get engaged after knowing someone for 3 months. Yeah, that's a big one. Maybe also be super sure of who you are as a person before you take a leap like that. You know, you can't love anyone else until you really learn to love yourself. And I had to kind of learn that the hard way. Every time I think I love myself, I learned that I could love myself a little bit more. And that was what happened to me last year, was I realized, you know what, there's a lot of room that I could use to expand my love for myself. And so I started working on that, and I've been single ever since, but it's been some of the most important months of my life trying to figure out who I am today and who I want to be in a relationship going forward.
That's incredible. And I love the idea of learning. To love ourselves, because I think often we try to jump to just love ourselves.
Yes.
And it's about learning to love. It's the learning process that is what we're all trying to skip and miss and leapfrog and hopefully just end up at love. And it's not, it's the learning part. And you're so right that we can all learn to love ourselves a little deeper. Fifth and final question is, if you could create one law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be?
It would be that you have to try to meditate.
Okay, that's great.
Because I know not everyone is going to be able to, but at least if you try just 1 minute a day, if you try, that would be my law. Because I think that would really shift things.
That's awesome. Everyone, thank Demi. Thank you so much for taking the time, your energy, your laugh, your little hey voice in the head that we'll never forget. I am so grateful that we got to spend this time together, that you shared so much about meditation, about expanding our consciousness. I know this is going to impact so many people, and I encourage you all to tag Demi and I in your post to tell us what you learned. I'd love to know what you learned from them and what you took away from them. And so please, please, please make sure you let us know. And thank you for listening to On Purpose. A big thanks to you and your team. And we'll see you again next week.